This is me, right before I found out about my wife's affairs and that she was leaving me and taking my son. There's no help for men out there. There ain't nobody waiting for me, hope that I get through. Nah, you're a man. You gotta do it yourself. You gotta pull yourself up by the bootstraps. A man's not supposed to cry. A man's supposed to be stoic. Yeah, a man's all those things. As a man, they don't tell you what to do when your world gets ripped out from underneath you. They don't tell you how to stop from spiraling downhill. They don't tell you how to stop. They just sit back and watch. So watch this. Hope you enjoy the show. For women, divorce has no consequence. They get to cheat, take the kids, take the income, and leave the husband with absolutely nothing. There's no consequence for women when divorced, but the consequence falls on the man. He loses everything. Why is that not considered a factor that contributes to male suicide? Here is life coach John from Bulldog Mindset. Him and I had a conversation just about this problem. He is one of many men out there dedicated to helping men, saving men, and stopping this epidemic of male suicide from rising even further than it already has. Listen to what he has to say.
So, as you saw in my video, I made it very personal. The storyline was not exact,
Right.
but it's pretty a general storyline that I think a lot of guys face when they get to that point. For me, it's still pretty hard to deal with. I think it's the elements of believing something, because these are foundational principles that we put that we stand on, that we believe in, and then once they're taken from you, or that you're found that they're not true, you then question everything else that was just as foundational in your life, right? And I think a lot of guys struggle with that. And I think what my goal is with this short film is to highlight the unspoken causes or factors. I don't want to say causes, because causes means like it was all that, but unspoken factors that contribute to male suicide and why it could be at such a disproportionate rate.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, because like what you said in your video also, the idea of identity is so powerful, right? And it's kind of interesting because actually one of the things I try to teach men is to form and not to have a role, but to have an identity that is unchanging, that cannot be changed. That's an internal identity. But I think it's good that you're highlighting that you're showing that a man gets into a marriage, he has a child, he has a family, and that becomes his identity as a father, as a husband. And then when that world is turned upside down by a woman who he thought he trusted, then and he loses all those things, he loses who he is, and so there's not a point in living. And and that, I think that message is powerful because that's what happens. Whereas, like you said, it's like, I think a lot of society tries to explain away it as a mental problem or alcohol and drug abuse and things like that, and it's not. It's a losing of your identity, because men are built that way to have this loyalty, to have this kind of feeling responsible and in taking on that authority, and then to have that stripped away. With that said, though, that's where I think, again, talking about some of the solutions to the problem.
What is the solution to having your identity taken from you?
So, I mean, I would say that the first step is prevention, right? It's teaching men ahead of time that do not put your identity in these things. Do not attach. I teach non-attachment, which it's kind of interesting because a lot of guys don't understand what non-attachment is. They think, okay, don't have feelings, don't get involved, don't get emotionally involved in the things, and it's actually the exact opposite. It means that to love fully, but to be willing to let anything in your life go, because it's all temporary. Nothing belongs to you, not even the atoms of your body. They're going to go into the ground when you die. The air that you breathe is not your own. And so when you look at life through that viewpoint, then you appreciate what you have at the time, and you're not attached to it. You're willing to let it go. So then you can fully pour yourself into something, because you know that, maybe some pain will be coming, but it's okay because you've already you've already given it away. You've already seen this as not yours and as a gift. And so so that's kind of like, that's one part of it. And the other part of it is that identity being an internalized identity. Like when you said, John, you're a life coach, that's really not my identity, because the reason why that's not my identity is because I could change, right?
Hmm.
My identity is rooted in something that cannot change. It's who I am as a man, and in my purpose in life, which my purpose expands beyond what I'm doing at my vocation. It expands beyond the vocation, right? And so my identity to me is, I look back and I see myself as what I've gone through, who I've become in that process, and those kind of intangible things that can never be stripped away from me. Anything that can be taken away from me, I am very careful to not make part of my identity, right? Only the things that I own and control and that can never be taken from
So,
me. Yeah.
so
And even your life, right? I'm not
you're
even
like,
attached to my life, right?
yeah,
Because if you become too attached to your life, then you become a fearful person, right?
yes, you
And
live out of
so,
fear. You live out, you
yeah,
make decisions based on safety and comfortability. And
right.
one of my biggest favorite quotes, when I was a coach, bodybuilding coach and fitness trainer for years, and one of my quotes I used to say to everybody was, "All right, it's time to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because you don't
Exactly.
grow in comfortability. Because that set that you fail in when you're lifting, and then you get 1 or 2 reps, and then you just drop. Well, that
Yeah.
set is probably the most powerful set out of your entire lift that day, because you went that much further past your comfort zone, and that's where you actually grew. You don't grow doing what you know you could do. You only grow when you
Exactly.
challenge yourself, go beyond it. But when these men come into this situation, because they are in their comfort zone, right? Their
Right.
comfort zone is their identity.
Hmm.
They're a husband. They're a father. That's what they dedicate their lives to that. Taken away from you. What do you tell that man how to make it? Like, hey, well, you know what? You should have prevented it by, that's a
Yeah.
little late, right? It can't go back. So how do you help them from that point?
Yeah. I mean, personally, like what I do when I coach guys is I go back and I help them to look at what had actually taken place and what happened, so they can see that they had some part in it, right?
Yeah,
Because again, there are some circumstances where men are completely blindsided by a woman, and it's entirely not their fault. But in almost all cases that I deal with, and again, not, again, it's like you said, they didn't know any better, right? So it's not like I'm blaming them because, it's just you didn't
yeah,
know any better, heck, but in many of the cases, probably a majority of them, what is happening was the man was not being a man in the relationship, and the woman walked over him. He walked on eggshells around her because he was afraid of upsetting her, because he was trying to just be good to her.
happy wife, happy life.
Mhm. And that is such the wrong. And what happens in that circumstance is that the woman loses attraction, she loses respect,
Hmm.
and the more kind you are, and the more that you're trying to not upset her, and the more that she starts to despise you, and then that's where she runs over you and does all these things, and then pretty soon it ends in a bad way. And
Yeah.
so I try to start with that, just so that, because I want to get rid of the victim mindset as much as possible, because
Hmm.
again, it's not to blame. It's not to say, hey man, it's your fault that your wife did this shit, because even though you may have been weaker in the relationship because you didn't understand what it is to be a man in a relationship, I usually say that, like, she still shouldn't have done it to you. That's fine. But for the future, like, I feel like if I can identify that and help a guy to see that, then he has hope for the future. Because here's the thing, like, when your world comes crashing down and you're like, I did everything right, I don't understand, like you said in your video, like I got X, Y, and where's Z, and then you're like hopeless. And when you're hopeless, that's when you're in that bad spot, because you're like, well, I don't know how I could have done any better. I did everything right,
Yeah, when
right?
you don't see
But
the red flags. But for me, like you said, my world came crashing down, and I was wondering, how could I have avoided this, and what now, right? Because now, moving forward, men take their value, they attach their value of themselves to what their wife, their family unit thinks of them. So if your wife cheats on you and mistreats you poorly, and that's your value, that's how you end up seeing yourself to a degree. Like, well, if I was of higher value, then she wouldn't have treated me this way, right? Like, if you try to process it. So
Right.
then the person starts thinking, well, I'm only this value. I don't deserve more than this. Or even though I feel like I deserve more than this, how can I expect anyone else to give me more than this when this person I invested all my life into valued me here? So how can I expect anyone else to value me more?
So I think there's two things about that. I mean, the one, I'll start with what you just mentioned, which is that as a man, you can never invest your whole life into someone else. It has to be like your mission and purpose has to come first, and then women and family has to come second. It always
Yeah.
has to be mission first. And and that also helps with the identity thing,
Yeah.
because that is an identity that you can hold on to, because that's your purpose in life. And so you can't lose that. And it's like, you know what? Even if you, and it's like you have to be selfish, like to some degree, and you really do have to be selfish in order to be altruistic, because when you're not selfish, like you can't give what you don't have.
Yep.
And so, when you make your life and your mission, your purpose in life, when that's the number one thing, it does a couple of other things as well, right? So first of all, it makes you invulnerable, because it doesn't matter whatever happens. Like, it's great to have a companion in life, someone that you love, but you could lose them, but it doesn't change the purpose, right? It doesn't change your mission. Like it's a casualty, unfortunately, right? Not fun, definitely pain involved. But the second thing it does also is it tends to keep the woman more interested, because as soon as a woman knows she's got you, as soon as she knows that you have made her the center of your life, she starts to lose attraction and drift away. It's like it's just a biological thing. Every
Yeah.
single woman seems to do that. And it's unfortunate because, again, like you said, the way that society, that we were teaching men, the way that our fathers taught us was to do that, to be loyal, to be the guy to make, your family and wife the center of your life, and to be that person. And again, I'm not saying to be a complete jerk or asshole or any of those things. I'm just saying that when that becomes your number one priority, that's what happens. And so many guys fall into that trap, trying to do the right thing, trying to be a good father, trying to be a good husband, and not realizing that this is the path that's kind of laid out for them when they do that, until it's too late, right? And so that's where it's, yeah, go ahead.
What's funny is that, because I brought it to a lot of men in my family what was going on, and I just couldn't get this response out of my head, and it always bothered me. And I'm sure a lot of other guys have heard it themselves. It's like I talked to my dad and my uncles about it, and they're like, "Well, why couldn't you make it work?"
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't you just? But you couldn't make it work. You're not man enough to make it work, and it's almost it's like you can tell they're very blue pill mindset. Just like forgive and forget. Like you need to forgive and move on. There's more at stake than just how you feel about things. And how do you approach that? Because that's almost a shame tactic. When a guy actually does decide to leave, he may feel a level of shame, or like he abandoned, his duties, his responsibilities, because he took them on as a family. And now he abandoned them.
So I think there's a couple of things. So one of them, again, is more on the preventative side, which is to say that, like, you can't have expectations on people in general, right? Like, and on the world. Like, anytime we have negative emotion, it is always because there was some expectation that was unmet. And so it's as ridiculous to have an expectation on a woman or any human being as it is to have an expectation that the weather is going to be what you want it to be. You can't control it. So anything you can't control, you can't really expect. And so anyone could do anything at any time. It's possible, right? I mean, people are capable. So I think part of it just comes to like letting go of all those expectations. And when you do, then also, again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't if you make the decision to say, okay, I don't want to be with this person because they cheated on me, that's fine. But it's also at the same time okay to say, you know what, it doesn't matter that they cheated. I'm okay with being with this person. Like it's a personal choice to make, right?
Oh yeah,
But it's no one else's choice. But having like letting go of expectations allows you to make that choice, to really make the choice, not to be forced into one or the other. Because the blue pill guys will say, oh no, you should make it work, you should make it work, what's the big deal, there's something bigger at stake. And the red pill guys will be like, oh no, once she cheats, that's it, toss her out, she belongs to the streets, and all this shit. And neither of those is true, right? It's like, it's what are your standards, and what do you want, and what do you see going forward? So I think also, like, the other piece of it with that whole thing is this trying to think what I was gonna say. So I lost
is
it
it how
now.
you value oneself? Because I mean, I think that's a part of it, right? So I would think the only people that would be upset would be the ones that believe that they were of more value than they were to their wife. That, like, obviously you weren't, when your wife made the decision to cheat on you, she obviously, had to process it in her head. She had to weigh it out. Is this risk, me cheating on this guy, or me having an affair, is this risk
Right.
worth the reward? So if, like, my husband finds out, am I okay leaving him? Am I okay losing? What am I losing if this all comes out? And that's the thing that made me think about the most, is like, she had to at some point quantify that. She had to rationalize that and come to the conclusion that if I found out and if I decided to leave, that she was okay with it. Like, it was worth it to her.
But see, you're thinking like a man, because men are rational, women are emotional. Woman doesn't think like that. Woman goes on how she feels, right? I would say that I mean, doing a lot of pickup, being in this industry, coaching a lot of guys, I can tell you that it's pretty dangerous. I mean, in the sense that there's not a lot of women that the right circumstance, the right guy saying the right thing couldn't get her to cheat no matter what. So,
Mhm.
but it comes down to, you as a man cannot have your value be external. It has to be internal. You can't seek
So,
that external,
I think that's the thing. I think that's where a lot of men suffer. Like, I knew I definitely
yeah.
struggled with that. Was I put my value on my titles, father,
Exactly.
husband,
Yeah.
things that were tangible, that I could hold, that I could see, but things that could be taken away from me. How should we talk to our sons about dating? Like,
Yeah.
I have a funny podcast, and I talk about it. I was like, I don't know how to tell my son what to do in dating during this during Me Too. I'm like, hey, make sure she signs this contract saying that everything on here is approved and appropriate, and that you won't get hashtag Me Too at the end of the day,
Yeah.
But if I keep on asking myself, if I was going to ask or talk to a young man or my son when he gets of age, about marriage, right now, I don't think I could honestly give him a non-jaded approach.
Right.
My first opinion would be like, hey, protect yourself. Make sure that you always have something on the side, like an emergency pack, to where if you get yourself in a situation where you have to leave in 30 minutes or less, you could just grab your bag and you could walk away knowing that you're okay. That you could walk away from everything knowing you're okay. But is that what we want to tell our sons and our boys about marriage?
I don't think so. I think so. There's a couple things. So the first one, I think, is preparing them, like we talked about at the beginning. If you know how to be a man in a relationship with a woman, you're not going to face a lot of these problems. And the way to do it, because it always starts, right? So if you trace it back, it's always some level of tolerance that the man had even before they were married, right? You're dating a girl. The first time you have a fight and she talks back to you and she starts, abusing you, because women go to abuse very quickly, verbal abuse. That's yeah. If you tolerate that, if you don't just walk, and then I'm not saying yell back, I'm not saying threaten, I'm not saying say, hey, never talk to me like that again. It's just as simple as this. It's just as simple as this. Hey, I don't appreciate you talking to me like that. And then, she continues and you walk, you're gone. maybe you come back or she apologizes, whatever, and the relationship continues, but you have it. These are my standards.
Mhm.
I do not lower my standards. You do not, no one talks to me like that. No one is in my life who treats me that way. If you're not abiding by my standards, you're not in my life. So that's the first thing I think that we need to teach young men, is to have that, because if that prevents 95% of the problem. Because if you're like that, because then you set the tone for the relationship. Then if you get married, you have a lot lower risk. There's still a risk, of course, but it's a lot lower. And this is what guys get really upset when I tell them this, because it feels like victim blaming. But I mean, this is the reality of the situation, is that, because I've seen it where there's a woman, a particular woman I know, I saw her date a guy. He was a strong guy. He was a fairly masculine guy, but he was kind of a nicer guy, and he was like a loyal person. And she treated him like total shit. She walked all over him. She cheated on him. She did all these things, right? Eventually they broke up. She got with this other guy. This other guy didn't tolerate any kind of bullshit from her, right? He was a much more masculine man. He just knew he was more red pilled. Like, he didn't tolerate any kind of bullshit. She worshiped him like he was a king. She treated him like a king. She cooked for him. She cleaned for him. She gave him back rubs. She never talked back to him. And so, again, this is where, again, a lot of red pill guys get jaded. And again, maybe where I'm kind of more, me and Rollo would differ, is that it had nothing to do with the girl, because women are receptacles. They
It had everything to
basically,
do with who the guy felt he was and who he projected
exactly,
he was.
yes,
He
because women mirror that.
showed her that he valued himself at this level, and he wasn't going to accept anything less than this.
Exactly.
It's
And we
funny.
fall in love, you know what I mean? We find this
Yeah.
wonderful girl, and we want to share our heart and just be totally vulnerable and open, and and have a shoulder to cry on as well. And we're weak in front of them, and we think that that's like connecting, because that's what the world has told us, but it's not. What it is it makes them despise you. The woman in that case will give you a pat on the shoulder and try to comfort you, but you're making her into a friend, and she's
Yep.
secretly like despising you this whole time, even though it feels like you're doing something good. And it's because guys have it flipped, right? It's like the person, like, in front of a woman, you must always be strong, right?
Yep.
Because that's what she's looking for, to be the strong man. In front of your guy friend, like we're having a conversation right now, right?
Mhm.
Like we're being vulnerable right now because we're two guys, we understand each other. This is the appropriate place to have that kind of discussion.
Yeah, the
where
griping
we
goes
can,
up the chain, right? The
exactly,
captain doesn't gripe down to the E1 and be like, "Oh, my life sucks," like how,
right,
it's always bullshit goes uphill. It doesn't go downhill.
yes,
That's kind of where I could say this is where I'm at in the stage, is that I am
yeah,
stuck between. I got shown that my wife didn't value me. She showed me how little value that she had of me, and now I'm in a situation with somebody I believe that is a lot higher on the SMB, by far, much higher, and literally treats me completely night and day. And a lot of it has to do with the understanding and gaining all the red pill knowledge that I had over the course of the transition to where I'm at now.
yeah,
It's funny that you mentioned, like, how do they talk to you? I tell her all the time, watch your damn tone. Don't come at me with that tone. It's tone. That's it. You can say whatever you want to say, but you better say it with the proper tone. Take that bass out of your voice.
exactly,
It's my thing, is like how the tone and how you deliver it, your presentation of what you're saying is offensive. Maybe not necessarily the words, but it's your presentation. And immediately, like, she'll stop. I have a better girl, or I believe so at this point.
she's
But
behaving better.
Well, yeah.
Right,
But I don't know
because you're keeping her in line.
I don't know how to receive it. I don't know how to receive her treatment. Like, yesterday, she just had flowers delivered to me. I'm a guy, I really don't have nothing to do with flowers, but you know what? She had them delivered.
Yeah,
My wife never went out of the way to do stuff like that. I'm just kind of like, why are you doing it? What did you do? That's my first thing. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want and what did you do?
Right.
It's like, how do you tell a guy that it's okay to accept this type of appreciation when he was shown that he has his value with something else?
So okay, so I think that maybe is a good segue into like the second part of like what to teach young boys, right? Because the first one, which I told you was how to handle be a man in a relationship, right? In order to avoid it. But the second one is, which I think is equally as important, which again I think the red pill community is sorely lacking, is that one of the things that people forget about men is that men, one of the primary things that we need to do as men is to love.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, you could be really jaded and you can have a lot of the red pill knowledge, and you can, and it can work for you in the sense that you're not going to get taken advantage of. But like the gift that we have to give to the world as men is love. And it seems like something that a lot of guys in the red pill community really don't like to hear, but it's true. And so that kind of like we have to teach our boys to be aware, to be the man, to be masculine, to have emotional control, but at the same time to give their love to the world, not expecting anything in return, and giving it no matter what, right? Without an expectation. Because when you go into like what makes a blue pill nice guy, it's a false sense of love. It's like I'm giving you something because I want to get something from you.
It's
So
quid pro quo.
I'm giving you. Exactly, right. I,
Yeah.
I want to get validation from you, from woman. I love you, woman. So now love me back, because that increases my value. That's how I get my value, right?
But it's like, like it's, I think that's very profound that men are supposed to love and men don't want to show love because
Right.
in their vulnerability, that's where they've been hurt. Because
And
they
and
have this
yeah,
expectation that, okay, if I do this, I'm going to get this.
right. And the thing, it's kind of funny. I was actually just talking about this on. You might want to take a look at was it on Bruno, on George Bruno?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I just did an interview, a live stream with him yesterday, and we talked about this, exactly the love and respect thing. And what I was telling them, like as far as like love, what women are looking for in terms of love is they're looking for a man that can love them at their worst. Because the greatest fear of a woman, because every woman knows she's a crazy bitch, right? And she
Mm-hmm.
tries to hold in the crazy bitchiness as much as possible and not spill it out, because she doesn't want to freak you out, she doesn't want to freak people out, and she doesn't feel like she'll be accepted when that comes out. But that's very feminine, right? So that's
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they're feminine, right? And so women are constantly testing you to see if you can weather the storm. They want a strong man that's a rock, that regardless of how crazy and bitchy that they become, he obviously he's not going to tolerate abuse, but he's not going to get emotional. He's not going to get into a
Not gonna
fight.
be
He's
moved.
just going to. Exactly. And he's just going to
Mhm.
be there. And when the storm passes over, he'll still be there. He'll still be loving her, no matter that she's crazy, and she feels safe with that guy.
Mhm.
And so that's the other part of it, is like, and kind of coming back to answer your question, like how should you receive those like gifts and those things, with giving her a reward, right? Giving her your approval and your love because she did something for you, as opposed to saying, okay, I can't be vulnerable at all, I can't be like showing any kind of love or emotion. That's not true. It's that you got to do it at the right time. It's like you said, like you're willing to say, hey, don't talk to me in that tone, right? That's a place where you're reprimanding, you're creating that structure. Like it's almost like women are like children, right? They need
No,
structure,
no,
they
they're
need
very
discipline,
much certain.
right?
Certain
Yeah.
they have to have boundaries.
Yeah, and they want to have those boundaries. Like a woman wants you to tell her, no, I don't want you to wear that. We're going here. I want you to do this, right?
Mhm.
She wants that, and so that's. But at the same time, if you're just that, and then there's no love element to it, she's gonna get tired of it, because it's like, how do you like keep on going after someone that you can't ever earn their respect
That
or
you're
their
never going
love?
to be good enough to not get reprimanded. To where everything,
Right,
it's almost like the dad that's always like, oh yeah, you could have done that better. I mean, that was good,
right.
but I mean, if you did it this way, it would have been way better. So, real quick, to the guys that are in the thick of it,
Mm,
the guys that haven't heard from their kids, um, the guys that have lost everything, right? Friends. You know, most of the time when you're married, your friends are all intertwined. They're most likely the coaches and stuff at the little league and other families from the little league. When they're alienated, what do you tell them? Like, how do you get them to see past the gray and the dark clouds that they're surrounded by?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. I mean, the first one is that, like I said before, understanding why things went wrong and that they did have some kind of responsibility in that, because that gives them hope for the future to say that if I do things right and I fix things in the future, that I can have an actual relationship and I can have those things. It's, you know, it seems kind of weird to sit, but when you acknowledge, when you feel like you're powerless, that's the worst,
Mhm.
right? So if we can go back and say, okay, what happened, and honestly, you know, not blaming you, but look, this is why these things happened. It wasn't entirely your fault because you grew up this way. You didn't understand how to be a man in a relationship, and this is why, you know, she lost attraction, she lost respect. So that gives them hope. Then the second thing I think is to say now, okay, so your life is shattered. Find a purpose. We need to find a purpose in your life. Like there's a, like everything happened for a reason. Like everything that you've gone through has made you who you are today for a purpose and for a reason. We don't know what it is, but now you need a new mission in life. What is that new mission going to be in life? And this is also part of the step of never having this happen again, is because what happened was you were a man on a mission in life, right? That's what attracted this beautiful woman to you. Okay. But somehow along that path, you lost your mission. She became your mission in life,
Mm.
and you lost your identity in this whole thing. But now let's go find a new mission or go back to your mission. And this time you're not going to get sidetracked from that mission. You know, a woman can come into your life. That's great. It's awesome. She's a good companion, accessory to your life, but the mission still comes first. So that's, you know, because when you have hope and you have a mission, now you have something to drive forward to. And then the next thing is, I think, just like looking at letting go of these things, right? There's so much bitterness because we have expectations on people, when really everyone's just running their script, right?
Yeah.
Like nothing is really truly malicious, right? I mean, we're all fucked up people, and it's like, you know, whatever happened to you, you know, you can look at things as betrayal, you can look at them, but if you hold on to that, then it's going to eat at you every day. You kind of have to just let go, and say, hey, you know what? This is just another person, another human who ran their script. They're all running their scripts. It's not personal to me. And there's nothing I can do about it. So I might as well accept it and just let that go, and move on. And then from this point forward, not have expectations on people, because the expectations is how you get disappointed. And uh, and, and you know, and at the same token, I think then you kind of give yourself permission to say, hey, I'm going to put myself first in life, and I have to, right? And I can't be a good father or husband if I don't put myself first. I can't, because I have to put myself, because my mission has to come first, because that's the thing that makes me the man that everyone can rely on, is because they know that the mission comes first. And so you kind of make this transition to say, all right, I'm putting myself first. I'm going to take care of my needs. I'm going to take care of what I need. And that sort of like sets up everything else in alignment, where you're never going to be like feeling like what your value comes from somewhere else. Because if you're putting yourself first and you have your mission and you have that, then no one can ever take that away from you. And so yeah, bad things may happen in your life, good, bad, whatever. You're still going to be steady where you're at. So I think that's kind of like to rebuild that, to realize that everything happened for a reason, and to have that new kind of mindset that's going to carry you forward. So
I think that's great. I think actually it's really interesting you mentioned purpose, because a lot of men, like myself included, I would say that's still the area that I probably struggle with the most. My purpose
mm,
for a while was being a father. My dad, I didn't get to be raised by my dad. My mom put him through divorce court, and I, was saw my dad on the weekends every once in a while, a couple of years here and there. So my goal in life was, you know what, no matter what, I'm never going to leave my son. You
yeah,
know, I was very proud to say until recent times, that there wasn't a day in my son's life that he didn't wake up to his dad and he didn't go to
yeah,
sleep to his dad.
yeah,
Now I can't say that, but for almost 13 years, I could say that I was the most consistent and only consistent person in his life. That's not a lot of fathers, unfortunately, can say that with their jobs and stuff. And that was my purpose. And at this point now, it's like, that's where I would say that was the hardest. That's still the hardest thing is getting that motive. You mentioned something in one of these videos I just saw you, and it's like everything, you could always have motivation when everything's going good. But when everything, like, shit hits the fan and you're trying to tap into that motivation and you just don't have it, that's when you have to have, that's when it requires work. That's when you're actually doing something. But I think the important part of that is the purpose. So if you don't have the purpose, regardless of how tough it is, you're not going to be motivated. Because you can be motivated, but you're just spinning your wheels. You're just running around in circles. You're not making any progress, right? You're just doing busy work, but you're not getting anywhere. So the key would be purpose, realigning and finding or redefining your purpose. Is that what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like here's how I define purpose. I believe that, like, in order to find your purpose in life, the secret to doing it is that you figure out the thing that you would do no matter what circumstance, no matter what station you were in life. No one can ever stop you doing, because in some regards you're always doing your purpose. You're just not aware of it. When you become aware of it, that's when things really click and align. And so, like, for me, my purpose in life is to learn whatever I can, synthesize that information, simplify it, and share it and teach it to other people. No matter what I was doing in life, from when I was a kid to working as a software developer, I've always done that. And so, like, Bulldog Mindset is a lot different than teaching people how to write code. Okay. But I'm doing the same thing, right? I care about people. I want to help them get better. I want to share the knowledge that I have and bring my insights and wisdom to it. And that's my purpose. I'll always be doing that, no matter what. You can never stop me from doing it. The key is, if I was a janitor, I'd be mopping the floor the best I could, and I'd be teaching other janitors how to mop the floor, right? But the key is, once I had discovered that and realized that was my purpose, now I can align with my purpose, and I can align my vocation and the things that I do. And that's why Bulldog Mindset works so well, is because I know that this is my purpose. And now I have a mission on top of that purpose. And now I have a vocation on top of that, and a way to apply that purpose, and I can apply it towards men. And so that's really, I think, what the key is just to look at your life and just say, there's some underlying current that has always existed in your life, that you've always done, that no one could ever stop you from doing, and that you're going to do forever, and figure out what that is. And that's your purpose. And the reason why that's your purpose, as opposed to anything else, is because a job title can change, right? You could be doing different things, you know what I mean? But the purpose doesn't change.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. It took me 35 years to get into acting, and I did a lot of it as a kid, and got accepted to a college when I was graduating high school. But 9/11 happened, and then I ran into the Air Force and did that. And for some reason, it's funny because, at 35 years old, I'm 36 now, but a year ago, I got into acting. And I have a feature film coming out this year. And I'm having to take a lead role on that. It's great. But I've always was entertaining. I was always telling a story or showcasing a story, even if it was bodybuilding. When I was bodybuilding, I was 285 pounds.
Oh, damn, shit.
Like I have pictures similar to yours. And I got told I could never compete. Well, I lost all the weight. I got down to 207, walked on stage on 4.3% body fat, and I won. I got sponsored by supplement companies and gyms in Washington State, and supplement companies out of St. Louis. And it was that story. I just always been telling a story of an untold story. And that's what this documentary is really important to me, not only from my own personal experience, but I want to tell an untold story that is not being shared. And that's kind of funny you mentioned that, because that made me kind of thinking, like, what is my purpose? and that was the one thing that kind of stuck, because that what you've always been doing is really interesting.
Yeah, and see, once you align yourself with that and you understand what that is, then your identity becomes tied to that, because that's something that doesn't change. No one can take it away from you. And when your identity is closely tied to that, then your value comes from that as well, and no one can take that from you either. Because when you put your value into external things, you're setting yourself up for a heartbreak, because eventually those things are going to be taken from you,
Yeah.
or they're going to be inconsistent, right? It's going to be, it could change at time. Why does this person not care about me today? And then, it's like a roller coaster ride. You want to be like steady on your purpose and your identity. So yeah, so I think that's the key. And again, like I said, so many guys don't get that, and that's why, like you said, with the documentary you're doing, I understand why guys would be driven to suicide and having everything taken away from them, because it's so wrapped up in their identity. But the alternative is, like, if you live the way that I've been talking about, you could see how there would be a different outcome, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
it would still be pain. I'm not saying it wouldn't be pain, but it wouldn't be the end of the world.
It'll be manageable. It's almost like, because a lot of guys, they bring up the financial factor of it. Oh, they're gonna take all my money and all my. I think guys could do that. I think guys can handle that. The loss of finances. It's the identity that they struggle with.
What's helpful too is if you read some Stoic philosophy. I don't know if you've gone into Stoics, but Seneca's Letters to Lucius, really good. Marcus Aurelius as well. But in Seneca's letters, he addresses a lot of these things about, like, basically non-attachment, and even like mourning the death of a child or a wife or something like that. You imagine, like, as tragic as, like, going through a divorce, like, imagine mourning the death of a child, right? Like, that's worse. But if you can be equipped to handle that situation as well in life, right?
It's almost like you have to, when a marriage ends, it is the death of it is a death. It's that thing is no longer alive. It no longer exists. And you have to be able to cope with that. Really appreciate your time. Do you mind if I'll email you the video once I get it all chopped up and edited? All right. Well, thank you, John.
All right, so much. Yeah. Take care, man.
Have a good one.
There's many out there like John, dedicating their lives to helping men who find themselves suffering from a divorce and loss of identity find their way to live a life with purpose. One of those is author Rollo Tomassi, the author of the Rational Male series. But it seems like no matter how much information is put out there, no matter how much awareness is brought to these situations, society seems to decide to mask it and call it something else. Toxic masculinity or mental health seems to be the two consistent narratives that we hear when we find out another man has taken his life. If we really care about men and saving men's lives is our true goal, maybe we really need to call out all factors